Good evening, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of Round 7 of the OLR x VSR Midweek Championship live here on TRTN. As always, I'm Regan Clark, and you join us here in Mie Prefecture, Japan, at the home of the Japanese Grand Prix in Formula 1, among many other series here at the Suzuka International Racing Course, one of the largest motorsports venue in Japan. This was commissioned for creation by Soichiro Honda, the founder of the Honda Motor Company, and designed by John Hans Hugenholtz in 1962. Originally opening its doors as a Honda testing facility, it would later find its way into all walks of motorsports in the decades that followed. It would enter the ring in Formula 1 in 1987, where it would swap hands with the Fuji Speedway as the home of the Japanese Grand Prix, with the latter being the original home in 1976. It would become the permanent mainstay home of the Japanese Grand Prix from 2009 onwards. Elsewhere, outside of Formula 1, we find in the FIM Endurance World Championship and Intercontinental GT Challenge represent two of the main pillars of international motorsports competition here at Suzuka via the Suzuka 8 Hours and Suzuka 1000 kilometers. On the local stage, Super GT and Super Formula are the two most prominent series to compete here at Suzuka, with the Suzuka GT 300km race having ran here since 1993. Super Formula has been the longest standing open wheel series to race at Suzuka, having entered the limelight some 15 years before Formula 1 did in 1973. As of next year, it will return to the GT World Challenge Asia calendar for the first time in 3 years. A difficult to understand, varied in design and often perplexing track has split the opinions of many fans and drivers alike over the years. One of the only remaining Figure 8 designs, and the only of which to be Grade 1 listed. It originally shared that limelight with the Circuit Fiorano, Ferrari's testing facility, up until 2024, when it would be delisted to Grade 2 status. We see a little trouble there for Leroy Donald, but taking a look around the field, all eyes will be affixed to this one here. On his home territory then for his car, Carlos Disch will take Honda home here at Suzuka. So far then, we're 6 rounds down in this championship and approaching our last 2, with the penultimate round today here at round 7. In the last round, Alan Alexander took his first platinum win of the season. Chris Davies collected on his second. Julian Akwati secured their first ever silver victory in this season. And Harrison Corrigan joined the midst for their first ever bronze division win. So 3 brand new winners there over the course of this season, 2 of which were from Bentley at their home race in Silverstone. As far as where that concerns the championship standings, taking a look in towards tonight's event, starting things off with the platinum standings, Fate Galaxy, in his absence from the last week's grid, finds himself still in the lead of the championship, but by a narrowing margin over Alan Alexander following their first victory of the season by now 30 points. Declan Anderson marks 3rd, with Lee Evans in 4th. John O'Driscoll marks the back of the top 5, 8 points ahead of Kieran Rod in 6th. Carlos Disch now up to 7th after the last round, with Owen Camus dropping to the 8th and last scoring position. In the gold division standings, Ian Oates leads the charge over Chris Davies. The two separate at this time, having a little glance at the points there by about 14 points in the championship, with Antonio Angeletta marking 3rd. Mr. Bernie in 4th, Grady and Susie in 5th, Jaden Johnson Ward in 6th, with Charlie Broadfield in 7th. Josh Whalen, on debut to last week's round, now marks 8th, ahead of Tavi Haysloop, who rounds out the scoring positions for 9th. In the silver standings, Leroy Donald leads over Sean McNally by the largest margin of any 4 categories today, with Matt Critt in 3rd, Robert Ogan in 4th, Andres Tijavari rounds out the top 5, Giovanni Palumbo in 6th place, with Ben Dexter in 7th, Milan Picorni in 8th, Lewis Perslow in 9th, and Mattia Marignoni rounds out the top 10. Julian Akwati, on their debut to this season, now marks a joint 11th alongside Peter Mikulas with 33 points apiece. Callum Gray rounds out the 13 scoring positions in silver. Last but not least, the bronze standings, which has gone up from 5 to 6 drivers with the introduction of Harrison Corrigan on their win on debut. They're now 5th, up and ahead of Bartek Kowalik. Meanwhile, up in front of them, it's Trigg, Osborne, Turner and Castle. Taking a look in towards the championship odds for today's event, there is very likely chance we could be crowning a champion in tonight's event. With 38 points up for grabs today, 76 before the end of the season. That's 66 in winning positions and 10 worth of fastest laps, 5 for each race before the end of the season. We see the gap to the platinum lead, 30 points. All that would need to be the case there for Fate Galaxy is to push that north by about 8 or 9 points to secure the championship tonight. As for the gap to the gold lead, that's 14 points. They'll need 26 to go even. As for the silver lead, Leroy Donald has to just finish ahead of Sean McNally by any means necessary for tonight's round. So the odds are much in his favour to secure the silver championship title in tonight's event. Meanwhile, in the bronze division, they'll need 18 points to secure in tonight's event. Before we get towards the end of free practice, of which you join us now into the last 5 minutes of, as we started off on the last 10 minutes of free practice just before the run in towards qualifying and the race today, of which we'll get into not too long from now, let's have a glance at balance of performance listings. Well, it's joyous news then for the Japanese manufacturers, as we find at the moment Lexus will be losing 30 kilos and Honda losing 18. Nissan a negligible 4 kilo rise. They find themselves a little bit on the wrong end of the scale there, so you can see them tucked in between two of the lightest cars on the grid, the Lexus RCF and the Bentley Continental, which now goes 2 on the trot for weight reductions in the double figures in the last 2 weeks. Honda with 18 kilos, of course, McLaren with 16, BMW with 5, Lamborghini and Ford both with 3. It's worth noting for Ford, though, a 19% restrictor remains on the Mustang. Meanwhile, in the weight gains, Aston Martin a single kilo heavier for tonight's round, Mercedes 10 kilos heavier, Ferrari 13 kilos, as you see on screen at the moment. Milan Piconi's number 29, making his way in towards turns 9 and 10. Meanwhile, it's turns 10 and 11. Meanwhile, Porsche is the heaviest with a 14 kilo ballast. We do note here a little bit of chicanery has been going on between Alexander and Deesh. Now, I'd say it's a pretty likely chance here that Deesh could be following suit with drivers like Alexander and Rod. Of course, he shares the status of being a Euro Titans driver with these two gentlemen, so he's more than likely to be following in the suit of starting from the back, as has been the case in the last couple of weeks. We see right now, right behind them, they're hounding to get out past. That's Lee Evans' brand new coat of paint for the Lamborghini for tonight's event, and they are not alone in that one, as I believe on the run up towards today's event we did note from the grid at this time, yes, that is a brand new coat of paint for John O'Driscoll. So we did see a bit of a change in the colour scheme, if I'm not mistaken, last week in Silverstone, and now we get to see that ball continue to roll, now a bright orange for tonight's event. We'll get up in towards those qualifying predictions not too long from now. Of course, news coming up later on today. We do have quite a bit to fill you in on, as we sadly missed out on our opportunity now the 3rd week running to cover Alton Park's race in the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series due to persistent weather troubles surrounding their server stack. But fret not, tonight's event looks peachy for these drivers, albeit they'll be eclipsed under night time here. A night race to follow as the penultimate round of the championship looms. Only one more to follow after today then, on August 12th, the Misano World Circuit in Misano, Adriatico, Italy. And so 2.5 minutes left to go in free practice. Having a glance at the timing charts then, Carlos Deesh is fastest over Alan Alexander by 125,000 of a second. Meanwhile, leading in the silvers is Leroy Donald, looking to be champion in tonight's event. Lee Evans makes 4th, Kieran Rodd rounds out the top 5, Jaden Johnson Ward currently leading the gold timings in the number 363 Lamborghini, 980 thousandths of a second off of that leading time by Carlos Deesh in platinum. Meanwhile, the leading bronze is Callum Turner. Connor Osborne joins the session as well, the number 17. Currently yet to put a time on the chart. We do just see very recently onto the grid there will be the Nissan of Sean McNally. Despite this being Nissan's home race, they are not at their home circuit. That would go to Honda. Of course, commissioned for creation by the founder of the Honda Motor Company, and originally opened as a Honda testing circuit. Where better to be behind the wheel of the NSX than right here at its old stomping grounds. We see, though, for Carlos Deesh having a little bit of horseplay before the end of this session, before we head up in towards qualifying, which could see quite a few shockwaves on this grid, because if we are to believe that Carlos Deesh might be up to some antics here with Alexander, Rod and O'Driscoll, there could which open up quite a sizable opportunity here for Leroy Donald and Lee Evans. We are told next week as well, and this is some interesting news to follow up in towards Misano's round on August 12th. That's going to be mixed conditions, we're told. Now, we have seen a fair few mixed condition races and a few different championships over the last few weeks here on TRTN, and it has been fantastic viewing all round. If I'm not mistaken, Silverstone was itself a mixed condition race last week here on the OLR VSR Midweek Championship. So as we crawl into the last 40 seconds of free practice, coming up around the corner then will be qualifying to set the stage for a 75-minute race, as has been industry standard over the course of this season. 20 minutes of qualifying up and around the corner, where we'll be getting the track tour and the qualifying predictions in just a moment's time. It's going to be curious then to see where these drivers go next. Of course, we did have that sort of continued dialogue here on TRTN for the last couple of weeks that the bronze division may need quite a stern reevaluation. Could it be the case here where there is a sort of a full rejig of the classing system heading into the next installation of this championship. Things could still be looking rather optimistic, though, for Alan Alexander. I mean, he delivered on what was a seemingly impossible feat, started towards the back of the grid in Silverstone, and then came out on top for his first ever Platinum win this season. I mean, it was unthinkable stuff, and weirdly enough, especially in his Bentley era, not the first time we had seen Alan Alexander do something like that in mixed conditions. Indianapolis was the first time we saw it for the Bentley, but in terms of wet conditions, we saw him deliver on an impeccable drive in Kyalami a few seasons ago on the NLRL Sunday League. Leroy Donald, fastest at the end of free practice, 2 minutes .080 in the number 14. Now, the odds definitely much in his favour, 51-point gap in the silver division, so all he need do is finish ahead of McNally tonight, and the championship will be in his hands in the silvers. So no stress whatsoever from the number 14, and is looking to take his shot at a first outright win. Of course, qualifying is to follow, and that will set the stage for the race ahead. We wait then for the nearest car down towards the line. It's the 111 of Callum Turner back into the pit lane. Then following on from behind them will be the number 17, that being Connor Osborne. So the two bronze drivers with McLaren, now minus that of Ryan Castle. It has been a very curious state of affairs for the bronze division drivers because they have been very, very fickle for numbers. And in some cases, if we take a look back through some of the previous wins, they didn't even have a finishing driver to their name. I think round 5 there is where we saw that one. And it was really quite a bizarre thing. Now, the bronze division also is without Harrison Corrigan, who took their first win on debut to Silverstone last week at round 6. So it is going to be a rather curious state of affairs down in the lower divisions of this championship. Fortunately for the drivers, a moment of respite as we head in towards qualifying. 20 minutes on the timer as day breaks here in Suzuka. Of course, the land of the rising sun. What better place to be than sunrise conditions, as we see already a very comical sight with John O'Driscoll making his way promptly down towards the end of the pit lane in the wrong direction to disqualify himself. So that was his, I'm not really sure what to call it there. Would be the disqualifying session for the number 420, as has been the case for him over the course of the season. You see then Kieran Rodd leads the charge. Behind him is Leroy Donald, who took the fastest time outright in free practice a moment ago. And as we stay on board here with the number 61 Lamborghini of Kieran Rodd, well known for his exploits at the back of the field with Euro Titans Endurance, alongside that of John O'Driscoll. Now, more recently, having been joined by Alan Alexander, and I believe in the last round as well, Carlos Disch. Was a very, very surprising turn of events there in Silverstone. Let's have a glance in towards those qualifying predictions for round 7 of the championship, and it shows Leroy Donald very likely to be taking pole position. Lee Evans in second, so much akin to what we saw there in the absence generated by drivers like Alan Alexander and Carlos Disch. If they are to run towards the back of the field today, that would set things up as predicted there, with Donald and Evans at the head of the field. Disch shown at 3rd place, with Chris Davies in 4th, Declan Anderson looking at 5th place, with Ian Oates in 6th, Robert Ogan in 7th, Connor Osborne in 8th, Antonio Angeletta in 9th, and Milan Paconi rounds out the top 10 on predictions. You can see front to back by about 1.8 seconds, so really not too much to play with there in terms of wiggle room from front to back. Now, one of the closest gaps there is 100th of a second. That's between Carlos Disch's time at 2 minutes 4:32 and Lee Evans's time at 2 minutes 4:22. So it is remarkably thin margins to play with here. That's the same story further behind, 200ths of a second between Connor Osborne and Antonio Angeletta. Following on board then with Kieran Rodd as we head up into the track tour, the Suzuka International Racing Course, on board with the number 61 Lamborghini. A great angle to watch on with then as we're on here with Kieran Rodd. The tour of Suzuka, a very winding design as we head up in towards that first sector. Of course, this opening straight gives rise into what is aptly named the first turn, despite being both turns 1 and 2. As we head up around the first turn, then at turns 1 and 2 into the S's. Now, this continues back on itself, and it's one of the more famed S-bend sections alongside the likes of Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, of which we visited last week at Silverstone. This carries all the way up from turns 3 to turn 7 at the Dunlop curve. And it's very challenging on the drivers. The mid-engine cars will flourish in these conditions where rotation is absolutely key for them. Off the exit of Dunlop curve up towards the two most challenging and deceptive corners at Suzuka, the Degners, turns 8 and 9. Very sharp, and you have to be very confident to get up on the curves on the inside and not get washed out to a very, very limited runoff space there, especially at turn 9. Up towards turns 10 and 11 here at the hairpin. This will stage itself as one of the major overtaking opportunities here at Suzuka. It's an element of surprise area of the track as you do head up and around that slight right-hand kink into an immediate hairpin left. Up and around turn 12, long sweeping right-hander. You've got to be careful to not clip yourself on the inside on the alternative layout of the track because there is still the curves there and it can catch you out, as we have seen historically at races here at Suzuka. Through Spoon, one of the most easily recognizable sections of Suzuka. Parabolic design, then sharp on entry, loosens out on exit from turn 14 past their national pits. On what I believe is the West Circuit, or the, the East Circuit here at Suzuka. In through the 130R. Super fast left-hander here at turn 15. You can see only a little bit of lift to the throttle. Rod eager to get back on the throttle there just before the run into the Casio Triangle. Here at turns 16 through 18. We see then down towards the line then from Kieran Rod, number 61, first into the fray. 4 timings today with 15 minutes left to go. Across the line he goes. 2 minutes, 662 is our baseline time here. Nearest to the line from behind him is the number 14 of Leroy Donald, who is fastest at the end of free practice and doubles that up to a half-second lead here in qualifying. 2 minutes, 107, the new fastest. Number 69 is nearest, so going to catch on board here Julian Akwati, who delivered on their first Silver Division win in Silverstone. Down to the line they go, and I should say for this season, as we have seen successes from Akwati before in the VSR GT3 Championship. No time set for Akwati, neither for that of the Porsche behind. I believe that was Giovanni Palumbo in the number 88, so we do see new times there for Andres Tichavari and Milan Piconi. They go 4th and 3rd. Nearest to the line for behind them, number 247, number 4, number 96, and number 111. 247, Ben Dexter was 4th place across the line a moment ago, and now he's down to 5th because Callum Turner has a thing or two to say, now up to 4th himself. Now leading the bronze division from 4th outright on track, only as it stands 6 times set and just over 5 minutes into the session. Number 6 nearest, here comes Ian Oates. Across the line there goes 4th, so now leading in gold. Behind 2 silvers and a platinum, but ahead of a bronze and 2 more silvers. Curious state of affairs. 315 was nearest to the line a moment ago. Alan Alexander with Carlos Diesch right up on his nose. We see there Diesch now 3rd fastest. Alexander no time set in the Bentley. Carlos Diesch representing Honda on this grid at Honda's home race in Suzuka has got quite the weight upon his shoulders. The Swiss talent has delivered on successes with Honda before. Now I should ratify as well what we were talking about originally with his successes with Honda was his maiden victory for Honda over on the NLRL Sunday League. Sadly, I have some disheartening news as following an investigation post-race at Monza, the season finale of Season 6 of the NLRL Sunday League. Sadly, his race win was taken away, so that throne still remains vacant here, but I would say it's a pretty likely chance if he renews his position at Honda for Season 7 of the Sunday League. I'd have no doubt in my mind we will be seeing that renewed once again by the very same Carlos Diesch. So nearest to the line here, if I try and play my cards right, I believe is yes, the number 69. So here comes Julian Akwati. From behind him is Giovanni Palumbo. So the number 88 and number 69 down towards the line, the nearest to the timing chart. We'll see. Across the line there goes Akwati to 10th. From behind him was Palumbo, staying without a time so far. Number 29 from behind them. Across the line a moment ago. Number 29, Milan Piconi, was there 7th with Kieran Rod. Staying in 2nd place, Lee Evans now makes it a Lamborghini 2 and 3, going up to 3rd, stepping 1 foot ever closer to the platinum pole position. Number 44 with Lamborghini, also new coat of paint. Then you can see full Verde Mantis get up here in the Huracan Evo 2. Nearest is the number 6 we saw from Ian Oates a moment ago. Across the line, but we'll see here from 8th place on track. Where does he find himself now as he's tucked in behind both Jaden Johnson-Ward and Chris Davies for the gold division pole position? They're up in 6th and 5th. He's currently 8th. Stays exactly there. Number 54 across the line and up to the fastest time there, followed by the 315 to the 3rd fastest time for a 1-2 in platinum is Carlos Diesch and Alan Alexander. Between them, though, looks to be the veritable David to their Goliath. Leroy Donald in the silver division, looking to be made champion tonight, is 45 thousandths of a second from Carlos Diesch and the number 14 Porsche. Number 28 nearest to the line there a moment ago. That was for Chris Davies. And he stays on gold division pole behind Lee Evans, Kieran Rod and Alan Alexander of platinum. But he stays up and ahead there by nearly a full second over that of Jaden Johnson-Ward in the 363 down in gold. Across the line a moment ago went the number 61. That was Kieran Rod. He stays fourth at this time. He's 260 thousandths from Alexander in third. Again, it does present itself a unique case because we've seen these drivers really pull a bit of a bait and switch. And I think it was the case last week where John O'Driscoll tried to one-up them there. Actually ended up getting himself kicked off the grid because the server would not allow him to reconnect following the end of qualifying. So that was a bit of a balls up there for the 420. You see though from Carlos Dish, I mean, this is working like a well-oiled machine here, and he's so close to the 159 bracket. Now, we saw all throughout the qualifying predictions for today's event, while many got within a sniff of it, not many else could get to where he stands right now. I mean, the original fastest time under predictions for today's event was a 2 minutes 155. This is a 2 minutes 062. He's already got that one pitched by about 900ths of a second, and then some. Lee Evans now marks the second fastest time of the session, up and ahead of Leroy Donald, makes it within 200ths of Carlos Dish. We see, though, big trouble for Dish to try and break into that 159 bracket. Struggles at the Casio triangle. Following right behind, and then there could be a leap for the 315 from behind, and that there is up to the fastest time, and it's Alan Alexander who breaches the 159 bracket, 159.897. And he's beside himself. He couldn't fathom any more time and let go of the controls on that Bentley in towards turn one. That is staggeringly fast. And I'd like to point out we are only just now coming up onto 10 minutes into this session. With another 10 minutes of qualifying still yet to follow, can anyone in their right mind do what Alan Alexander has done today? 159.897 in a Bentley Continental of all vehicles. Now, of course, they do stand with sizable advantage under BOP for tonight's event, but it is a very odd lineup here inside of that top five. Two Lamborghinis, a Porsche that is 2 divisions lower than the rest of the drivers in the top five, but is still challenging them nonetheless, a Honda and a Bentley. I mean, this is the start of a bad joke, had ever I seen one, but the 315, you see, is just formidably fast. And we were thinking maybe it was going to be a super high 159.9, not a high 159.8. So he has really took that glass ceiling and put quite the sizable dent in it. Might be bulletproof glass if you're denting it. Shattering it would be more the proper use of vernacular. Dish remains second. Evans to the line, though, 185 thousandths to clear. We could still see some more surprises on the way. He only needed 200ths on Dish, but sadly could not find it. And the last lap just gone. 9 minutes left to go. Leroy Donald currently on his way out from Spoon. The nearest to the line will be Robert Ogan as he makes his way back into the pit lane. So from behind him there, I believe, is the 247 to the line. Ben Dexter, followed by Sean McNally. We see there for McNally now up to what is a division second in silver. Ben Dexter makes division third. Otherwise 7th and 10th overall. Nearest to the line, the number 14, so currently leading silver, is Leroy Donald. 51 points he's got over Sean McNally, as mentioned before. He's the one likeliest to become champion tonight. There is still the chances for a few other divisions right now. Now, in the absence of Fake Galaxy, it still opens up many a question here with Alan Alexander second in platinum. If we pull back up the odds for the championship tonight, this would be heavily reliant on Fake Galaxy being able to show up to the event and outscore Alexander by 8 points to make it that 38-point threshold needed to secure the championship tonight. So, as it stands to be the case, as Carlos Dish now sees himself off to the back of the field, Alan Alexander could very likely, by just nature of finishing this event, and if I take a look at the scorings here, would need to finish this event ideally first. Otherwise, it could be anywhere as far down as looking here second with the fastest lap. So again, a bit of a tight margin here to play for Alexander, but if Silverstone was any reminder, he definitely has the capabilities for race wins, and that would be paramount in his efforts to overtake the championship by 3 points over Fake Galaxy for the run into the season finale in Misano. So unlikely that platinum will see itself wrapped up in tonight's event. Gold, on the other hand, could see a change of leadership there between the two leading gold cars. The 61 now disqualifies himself, so we are seeing the formations of this new wider back row bandits group. 4 in total. They were once 2, then 3 now likely to be 4. We'll see, though, what Alan Alexander chooses to do. Could we be seeing a little bit of a turn heel today? We've been saying that and floating that idea for the last couple of weeks, and every single time we've been showing up wrong. So it'll be curious when that one day turns against us. As for silver, of course, Leroy Donald to Sean McNally, he's the likeliest to wrap. As for the bronze division lead, now this is a curiosity because it pertains to a lead currently held by that, if I'm not mistaken here, of, yes, Ryan Castle, who is, as you can see, not on the grid. Connor Osborne stands the chance here to try and go up and ahead of him. Meanwhile, it's Callum Turner who is closest by points technicality. He would need, right now, 20 points to overtake. So there is a chance, much like we discussed in gold, there could be a regime change at the lead of those championships. Meanwhile, ones to watch as well will be platinum and silver, as they do actually seem to sort of clash worlds here with 6 minutes left to go, with Leroy Donald inside of a mostly platinum top 5. I do say that now because we do have 2 gold drivers in the mix after the disqualifications there for Deesh, Rod and O'Driscoll. Speaking of Jaden Johnson Ward, we see here down toward the line as we pull away the odds from the championship. From 5th, now it's worth noting, not too far off a shout here of Chris Davies' gold division pole time. Right now, these two find themselves separate, doing the rough maths on that one by about... say about 195 thousandths roughly there. Meanwhile, Lee Evans still second at the moment, but he is closing distance. He's 185 thousandths from Alan Alexander. 159.97 is still the fastest time for today's session. 5 minutes left to go here in qualifying for round 7 of the championship. Leroy Donald still looks to be a hopeful one, and it's worth noting that he finds himself right now, as it stands to be the case here, about 25 thousandths from Lee Evans's second place time. There is a lot of potency in this drive from the number 40 and a lot of venom to it from Leroy Donald. We see here Ian Oates to the line from 12th and stays right where he is at the moment. He's not too far away from Milan Picconi in 11th place there. Oates finds himself rather reluctantly shy of the top 10. Number 44 nearest, so here comes Evans. We'll leave you on board to the 44 as we head up into the next lap here. We'll leave you on with Lee Evans. We'll be back to you in a moment's time. We'll just see him down towards the line. That 185 thousandths to clear. Sadly, didn't find anything of the sort, so going to catch on board here. We'll leave you with Evans. Back in a moment. Right now, taking a look at the telemetry here from Lee Evans, he's just floating around a possible upgrade as we now see the 315 has disqualified himself. So that does mean Alan Alexander steps down from pole position. The new pole sitter is the one right here, the number 44 of Lee Evans. He has to defend away what is a very thinly held lead, 25 thousandths as mentioned before, to Leroy Donald in second. These two still lapping the track with just under 3 minutes left to go. They've got feasibly about 2 more laps to play for. So you see here from Evans. Meanwhile, recent shift there for the number 6, now up to 7th place. Ian Oates back up into the top 10. 18 cars in attendance. And curiously then, 4 of them stand down from the back of the field. O'Driscoll, Rod, Deesh and Alexander. The 2 back rows of the grid, the 8th and 9th row. Now all bandit territory. Across the line there we go with Lee Evans. He still sits tantalizingly close to himself, breaching in to the 159 bracket, as we saw not too long ago that of Alan Alexander do. Meanwhile, for Donald, no dice on an upgrade to pole position outright. He still holds division pole in the silvers. It's currently then platinum, silver, gold in the top three, with Chris Davies on gold division pole in the number 28 McLaren. Meanwhile, down for bronze, it's Connor Osborne from Callum Turner. Looking in with bronze at the moment, more specifically to that of Callum Turner, because there is a very likely chance, as mentioned before, with a 20-point gap between himself and an absent Ryan Castle, that he could likely see himself in towards the lead of the championship coming up in towards Misano next week on August 12th for the season finale at round 8 of the championship. All he needs to do here is just finish where he is. Second place is the default last place for these cars. Only 2 bronzes in attendance. Has been a diminishing number of attendees for the bronze division over the course of this season. All he needs to do is finish in second place. That's 27 points under his belt. That puts him 7 points in the lead over Ryan Castle by the time they head to Misano next week. Meanwhile, the 2 fastest drivers of today, after the disqualifications, Evans and Donald, stand in from the pit lane. They're joined by Davies, Johnson, Ward and McNally. I'll leave you on board to the number 44 once again. Not 44, sorry. The, believe here, number 88. My mistake. Back to you in a moment. So at the end of qualifying, the top 5 remain where they are. Sean McNally now into that top 5 as well. And a very bizarre celebration there from Alan Alexander. He says he's got 3 tenths on pole despite putting himself in 15th. The curiosity is behind the bandit mindset. Ogan to the line. Needs about 600ths of a second. In fact, needs about 34 thousandths of a second. And finds it more than enough to take division second in silver over Sean McNally. Number 96 makes a Porsche 1-2 in silver, with Leroy Donald securing pole. Nearest to the line at the moment was a car we watched with not too long ago. It's this one here, Giovanni Palumbo off the exit of 130R. Now he needs about 87 thousandths of a second on Ben Dexter to go up to a division 4th in silver. He rounds out the top 5 in division and the top 10 outright. Out through the Casio triangle, Palumbo withdraws to the pit lane. The number 88 seems content enough where he stands to hold the top 5 start in silver. Ian Oates down to the line in the number 6. And then nearest will be the 111 of Callum Turner. Oates to the line from 7th. Where does he find himself at the end of the session? Up to 6th, ahead of McNally. So between the 2 silver division podium drivers there of Ogan and McNally. Ogan up to that, of course, recent division 2nd and into the top 5 by the end of today, with Oates right behind him on the 3rd row. Nearest is the 111, so here comes Turner. As we mentioned before, all he need to do is finish today's race, and it'll be 7 points in the lead over Ryan Castle, who is still a no-show for the bronze grid today. That 20-point lead could fall apart, and it goes one more there, because Callum Turner goes ahead of Connor Osborne to bronze division pole, up to 8th place there at the end of qualifying. Grand show from the 111. Lee Evans on pole position here in Suzuka, with Leroy Donald on silver division pole, right behind him in 2nd. Chris Davies on gold division pole, right behind them as well. 3 pole sitters by division on the first 3 positions. A very, very solid run of things then here at the end of qualifying, and 4 drivers deliberately starting from the back on the 8th and 9th row of the grid. Alan Alexander, Carlos Deege, Kieran Rod and John O'Driscoll. Those 4 will be ones to watch over the run of today's race. But before we get towards the grid and the overtaking opportunities there. And if we can catch our words, let's have a little glance at the news for this week. Now, of course, some of you may have already seen, but in IndyCar news, the next generation Dallara IR28 has been revealed. It's the first technical revamp to the IndyCar chassis since 2012 with the introduction of the Dallara DW12, which had been revitalized over the last 16 or so years before the introduction 2 years from now of the IR28. You can see its speedway and road course configurations. Now, aerodynamic efficiency has been at the forefront of its new design ethic, as well as the cars being plenty more raceable and in a much closer proximity to one another, trying to knock down as much dirty air, following a lot, and you see as well in its design ethic and in a lot of the comments made by fans of the sport, it's very F1-esque. They are taking a big leap out of the F1 notebook, so to speak here. But powering it will be a 2.4-litre V6 hybrid engine set to produce somewhere in the ballpark of about 760 brake horsepower. Testing is already underway at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. One notable finding they've already spoke about here to journalists has been its remarkable build quality. This could be quite a reassuring sign for the next generation of IndyCar. Elsewhere in the World Rally Championship, Sami Pajari now 2 on the trot for race wins, winning Rally Finland after his maiden victory in Rally Estonia just a few weeks ago. The Finn came out on top against one of the most bizarre rounds of the Rally Finland we'd ever seen here, with massive wipeouts across the paddock. One of the most notable of which, stage 17, Sebastian Ogier, joined by the newly returning Julian Ingrassia, went off during stage 17, a massive wipeout. Fortunately, he was able to walk away from that one. He was taken into medical attention by the end of that day, and we are told that he is perfectly fine and will be more than likely returning into the next round of the World Rally Championship. Pajari now advances to second, right behind teammate Elfyn Evans. It's still a Toyota 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the World Rally Championship standings, with the leading Hyundai being Adrian Formeau. Behind them in 6th place, I believe that would be. Elsewhere, news from Formula E. Teo Porcher is set to join Opel for the 2026-27 season of the Formula E World Championship. In the dawn of the Gen 4 era, of course, Opel announced a few months ago they'd be joining the grid for this season, and now they have secured their first driver, former Mercedes test driver and F2 talent, Teo Porcher. So that concludes our news for the time being as we head up in towards today's grid. Now, we do have a rather interesting set of news to talk about there, as Alan Alexander has been relegated to the pit lane. Meanwhile, Kieran Rodd is attempting to jump his way across the grid at this time here at Suzuka. Just about a minute and a half before the start of the formation lap here for round 7 of the championship. It's Lee Evans on pole position, Leroy Donald in 2nd, Chris Davies in 3rd, and Jaden Johnson-Ward in 4th. Robert Ogan makes 5th with Ian Oates in 6th, McNally, Turner, Osborne and Dexter to 10th. Palumbo in 11th, Picorni 12th, Akwati 13th, Tishavari to 14th, Alexander, Deesh, Rod and O'Driscoll down to 18th there. The most curious of which being that of Alexander relegated to a pit lane start. But these were much similar conditions to what he played off against in Silverstone, and he came out on top in Platinum. So this is certainly a one to watch. Carlos Deesh, of course, Honda's home race here at Suzuka, a track designed at the request of its founding, its founder, I should say, Soichiro Honda. Meanwhile, for Rod and O'Driscoll, the original back row bandits mark the 9th row as the number 61 continues to hop its way sideways onto the formation grid. 6 seconds then to the 30-second warning, on with Evans. As we head up in towards a night race here for the penultimate round of the championship. This is going to be a very, very curious one here. As I do actually rather like to get on board here and just see from from Rod's bizarre perspective here, because he's been, this is, I would say, the GT equivalent of hydraulics. You know, you have the old Impalas with the massive hydraulic systems, and they were, you know, they would jump up and down. What he's using, he's obviously using a bit of a glitching game, but I'd like to imagine if this were a real application, he'd be using the air jacks, and he's just got a canister that he just keeps squeezing into that to get the car to jump around on the back of the field. On board with Evans for the run in towards the formation lap here for round 7 of the OLR X VSR Midweek Championship. And so it's all green at the front row, with that of Leroy Donald and Lee Evans. At the end of that qualifying session, of course, it was the platinum pole sitter here, Lee Evans, who came out on top after 4 disqualifications, seemingly all by volition, from Alexander, Rod, O'Driscoll and Deesh. Silver division pole from Leroy Donald, gold division pole from Callum Davies, and bronze division pole from Callum Turner. Did I say Callum Davies? Chris Davies, my mistake there. Was still thinking one step ahead towards the bronze drivers. We see then from Alexander, he's at the back of the field. He's not going to have the best of starts here, I don't imagine, because on the run up towards that S's section, yes, it can result in a bit of a wipeout, but if done correctly, it's very difficult to make your way back up to the rest of that pack. He'll be praying for action up in front of him. So following on board here with Lee Evans and getting into the conversation surrounding our major overtaking spots here at the Suzuka International Racing Course. Now, turns 1 and 2, though a little bit on the odd end for the first couple of laps. If you're close enough to your adversary for the run-up in towards turn 1, because of its parabolic design, there is the opportunity to sneak up the inside for turn 2 to put yourself side by side for a run-up to turn 3. So keep an eye for that bridging point in between the first turn and the start of the S's. Off the exit of the Degners here, up towards turns 10 and 11 at the hairpin, this will be another major overtaking opportunity for our drivers, and they'll have to really spring an attack on their rivals on this grid. As you see, coming out of this section here, you'll be darting off from what was technically a run-off to the left to a little bit more on the right. You leave yourself open on the left-hand side if you want to have the optimal racing line in this section. So they've got to keep their wits about them here. Maneuverability is at the forefront of concerns for drivers today. You can see a grid dominated by mid-engine cars. You look all the way down to find, well, mid and rear engine, if we include the Porsches. You have to look all the way down to where McNally is positioned to see the first of our front-engine cars on this grid. Heading up towards Spoon. Now, a good exit from Spoon can set you up here for the run through to 130R and the Casio Triangle, another area of interest for overtaking opportunities in today's event. Though less sort of rich for opportunities as you'd find in Formula 1, especially this year, as they, I think it's the case, what are they losing, 30, 40 kilometers in 130R? I mean, it's just a questionable state of affairs there. They had to cut that out of the footage as well, if I'm not mistaken. But for these drivers, they'll be heading around flat out as fast as they can. We have seen a little bit of a lift of throttle even for the mid-engine cars just to make sure they don't run out wide. But it'll be that very heavy braking zone into turns 16 through 18 at the Casio Triangle. The drivers will be setting to run up on the inside. Very tight section of the track, but not impossible to fit two GTs side by side in that section. It has made for a very entertaining area to watch here at Suzuka. And with visibility brought down because of the nighttime conditions, this could provide us with a very unique perspective of Suzuka, a track we rarely ever get the opportunity to see in night racing conditions. Well, it's certainly a first time for everything. 75 minutes on the clock. One mandatory pit stop to play for, as has been the case over the bulk of this season. And so beginning the run down through the Casio Triangle, forming up on today's grid, 18 cars in attendance to today's event. 17 on track, 1 from the pit lane. 9 on one side, 8 on the other. Here at the home of the Japanese Grand Prix. The Suzuka International Racing Course gives rise to the penultimate round of the OLR X VSR Midweek Championship Round 7. About to get underway here. An hour and 15 minutes to play for, 75 in total. Evans from Donald down towards the line then here in Suzuka. Without further ado then, we are green and racing here in Japan, and a great start from both on the front row there. Donald trying to get the immediate jump on Lee Evans, but Evans holds the inside for the run up towards turn 1 and 2. A great start from the Lamborghini, but side by side with the Porsche, trying to go the long distance there. Donald was getting very, very ambitious, but ultimately falls short in behind Jaden Johnson-Ward, who has a lightning start. Right behind, that's Robert Oken getting turned around and caught up in a huge kerfuffle there off the exit of turn 2. Big, big trouble for them right off the bat. Not the start he'd be looking for there, as he was swept around by the Nissan behind him, though that wasn't the staging point of his incident. I don't believe, actually it could be there, looking at the review of the crash. As we see a big spill of cars caught up in the background there. I believe also caught up was Julian Aquati in all of that mixture. Right now it leads with a Lamborghini 1-2. Evans from Johnson Ward, then Donald, then Davies, then Oates in the top 5. Off the exit of the Degners we go in through turn 9. Already a minute through on today's event, and action already ensuing here at Suzuka. Looking further down the line here just to see the perspective of some of the cars out back. Andres Tichavari is tucked up behind that of Carlos Deesh and Ben Dexter. John O'Driscoll up in front now into the top 10. So a very, very brisk start, all things considered. Having a look at the number 61, you can see there is Julian Aquati up in front. This is Kieran Rod's point of view. We see from here one of the 4 back row bandits. Now it was technically 3 for the start of the race, 1 still from the pit lane, the 315 of Alan Alexander, who joins the field from out of turn looking here, turn 12 as we head up through Spoon. Rod spearheading that charge then for the drivers, starting from those last 2 rows on the grid. You can see behind them a little bit of internal squabbling between Deesh and O'Driscoll. Now this could be a curious one to watch here. Let's go to catch on with the 420. Now forfeiting position behind the Honda. You can see rockets up through 130R. Very well lit section of the track here. Wonderful to see, even in nighttime conditions, the full scope of what they're tackling at 130R. Out through the Casio triangle. You see a little bit of a wobble off the exit there for John O'Driscoll. He's losing a lot of time. Car's understeering quite badly in Sector 3. He's lost a lot of distance there off to Carlos Deesh and Kieran Rod, and he's losing even more distance from behind to Ben Dexter and Andres Tishavari. A troubling start then for that Ferrari. Looking here with the number 54 of Carlos Deesh, you can see up in front, that's trouble for Palumbo and Aquati. They're side by side off the exit of turn 2. They make a little bit of contact there and towards turn 3 and turn 4. There he gets turned around. Palumbo collects Rod. Through goes Deesh. And somehow Aquati is still with us here. That is tremendous luck from the 69 not to get caught up in the aftermath of that. All that got very, very ugly off the exit of turns 2 and 3. Now up through Dunlop. Carlos Deesh advances to 8th place, so he's risen up through the grid here. Now on to that 4th row. Started, I believe, on the 8th row, so up 4 rows in 3 minutes. It's tremendous stuff there from the number 54. Looking for Connor Osborne here. He leads bronze, as it was, I believe, actually caught down. The order was, I believe, was that of, yes, it was that of Callum Turner, now down at 15th. But, oh, as you see trouble there in the foreground, that, I believe, was for the Nissan of Sean McNally. Let's have a little glance at that. If I'm not mistaken, that was contact. Unless my eyes are playing tricks on me here, that did get... We see here, so it's Alan Alexander versus Sean McNally. Yes, it was contact, so my eye's not playing tricks on me. You see here with Andres Tishavari, half a second from Ben Dexter. Behind him is Milan Picorni and Callum Turner, Sean McNally and Alan Alexander. Looking up towards the front of that field, let's go to get a look on board with the Lamborghinis up at the head of the field here. Jaden Johnson-Ward hunting down Lee Evans. He's up and ahead here of Leroy Donald, who took a risk down at turns 1 and 2, and it just didn't pay off for him in the long run. Now we see it's a straight run down through the tiers on the podium here. Platinum, gold, then silver. A Lamborghini 1-2. It's a rare thing to see on any grid. It's even rarer here. Evans being given the baton and absolutely took the opportunity to run with it. He's 2 seconds faster over both Johnson-Ward and Donald in that last lap alone. The 44 is really looking to cement himself on this grid. We've seen plenty of his talents demonstrated in his time spent in gold in the previous championships of the VSR GT3 Championship. He is a tremendous driver, one that we can certainly vouch for here. But on this grid, on a brand new series, up until today, he had yet to find the grounds to emerge from the shadow of his fellow Platinums. But fortunately, their antics from the back has only given rise to his control up front. Off the exit of turn 7, we still see here the fight going on for second place between the gold and silver division leaders, Jaden Johnson-Ward and Leroy Donald. In through to the Degners, we see a bit of a rocky run there for the Porsche. Off the exit of turn 8, kicks up some gravel into the eyes of Chris Davies and Ian Oates behind, who are the 2 gold division leaders in the championship at the moment. So there is a lot of stakes to be played for between those 2 off the exit of the hairpin. We'll catch on with that battle for a second a little later on. We see here from Evans. I mean, this has been a staggering start here from the 44. 2 minutes, 445 was his last lap. Currently the session fastest in the 44 Lamborghini. And Suzuka is really with his, where he's been able to sort of come alive, so to speak. We've seen it had been a very perplexing choice all season, one that we have spoken about many a time here on the OLR VSR Midweek Championship, about his choice to come away from what was a last few season tirade with Nissan, then into Mercedes, to join Lamborghini of all marks. But this is now really starting to pay off for him, and good things come to those who wait. I think the 44 acutely aware of this. He's waited long enough, 7 rounds of trouble. Heading in towards today's race, though, it's been absolute bliss from the start. We'll see, though, how it fares over the next hour and 8 minutes. Taking a look then as we head up into the first 10 minutes of this race. Evans leads from Johnson Ward, Donald in third, Oates in fourth, and Davies in fifth. Carlos Disch, though, you can see really quite the caliber of driver that Carlos Disch is, because even in the oddball choice of the Honda NSX, we are seeing a tremendous bit of driving here from the number 54. He's gone from the second to last row of this grid, now up to its third row. The last time we saw him, he was actually behind, I believe here, was that of, yes, Quatti and Palumbo before their incident as well. We see here for that of Giovanni Palumbo. He's now being hounded for position from the back of the top 10 by that of John O'Driscoll. Brand new coat of paint there for the 420, now a bright orange on that Ferrari. Off the exit of Dunlop here at turn 7. You see he's right on the rear bumper there of Giovanni Palumbo. This could end in tears if they don't gauge their brakes properly. We see out through the Degners. Very rocky run through there for the Porsches. That's been a routine case. We saw that also for Leroy Donald. We'd yet to seen anything for either Ogan or Tishavari. The other two Porsches we've yet to document there at the Degners. We see leaps for the inside there for John O'Driscoll at turn 11. Exactly demonstrating our point as to why that's a major overtaking opportunity. You do have to be right on top of your opponent, but you can spring that attack because they leave themselves open on the inside. Speaking of Porsches, we see here Leroy Donald still in pursuit of Jaden Johnson Ward, so it's got to catch back on board with the action up at the front of the field. Battle for second place now seen through the eyes of the attacking driver. Formerly held second place at the start of this race, tried to go the long distance on Lee Evans and sadly came up short. Now it's his efforts to try and return to second. He leaps for the inside here at Casio. Can he hold it, being the question. Very, very late onto the brakes, using the benefit of the Porsche here at Suzuka, and he does have it. That is remarkable from Leroy Donald. One of the best attributes of the 992 is its tremendous stopping power, and he knows exactly the limit to charge for down at Casio. That was textbook stuff from Leroy Donald. Likely Evans, we had seen he'd been fired up for the run-in towards today's race. You can really see these two leading by example, but I would also like to illustrate here a driver that had somewhat dodged any notice on the radars, especially for quali predictions, was Jaden Johnson Ward. He has turned what was a very solid qualifying into an even better race start, some nearly 10 minutes in towards round 7. He's holding third place. He's leading the gold division on this grid right now, ahead of Oates and Davies, the two championship rivals in the gold division, in lieu of their chances to become champions tonight. We see here for Leroy Donald, with Sean McNally down in 17th place. This one is likeliest of any 4 divisions right now to be crowned champion tonight. That 51-point gap will only continue to grow. He only needs 38 by the end of today. So where a lot of regime changes are coming the way of possibly that of gold, definitely coming up for bronze, and even the likelihood for platinum, right now is the case where silver could close its doors on a championship tonight. With 10 minutes in, the battle for second continues to rage on. A great overtake in the last lap just gone for Leroy Donald to put himself up in a second place over Jaden Johnson Ward. Having a look further around the field to see where the nearest fights may be coming from, we turn our attention here to Alan Alexander versus Milan Picconi versus Andres Tishavari. Last week gave rise to one of the grandest performances we had seen from Alan Alexander in his time spent with Bentley. A cunning strategy and consistent performance delivered him his first platinum win of the season, and Bentley one of 2 division wins in the same day. It was platinum and bronze that had wins from the Continental. We see from Milan Picconi struggling to keep distance with the Continental as it hounds position of Andres Tishavari out in front. We see here from Alexander down through the Casio triangle. The driver well in tune with his machine here. Like we could say for another driver that's been on our radar for a long time over on the NLRL Sunday League, that being that of Zolt Beefcard. It's this loyalty to this machine that has proven such an effective device here for Alan Alexander, because he has stayed in with Bentley despite the risk that it presents over the last couple of months, and it has blossomed into one of his greatest vehicles for use. So we see there's some trouble for Connor Osborne. He drops in behind Alexander after getting too far on the inside off of turn 2. He drops right onto the nose of Tishavari and Picconi. Not too far behind them is Callum Turner, originally having started today's race on the bronze division pole. Now, I believe we still have that replay. Actually, no, that's the incident earlier between Alexander and McNally, but the starting incident, we originally mistakenly identified the McLaren being collected as that of Julian Aquati. I believe it actually was Callum Turner. You see there, that's Aquati up in front being hounded by John O'Driscoll. That's the fight for 8th place going on at the moment, as we now see Alan Alexander puts himself distant to Connor Osborne, Andres Tichavari and Milan Picconi. Now looks to get himself up onto a fight into the top 10 with Giovanni Palumbo. You see here Carlos Deege fighting with Ian Oates. V6 versus V6. Homegrown machinery here at Suzuka, going toe-to-toe with one of the most dominant V6 cars of the modern era. The Ferrari 296 has been a very, very potent car. Ferrari themselves are already developing an Evo package for the 296. They're going toe-to-toe right now with Honda's Evo package for the 2nd generation NSX. We see, having took a little bit of grass there on his right-hand side, went straight out wide for Ian Oates, but he still holds his ground towards the Casio triangle. They've got to be careful on those curbs. Very, very easy, as we just see there with how sprightly the rear axle was for the Honda. For the car to get a little bit light there and to turn itself around. You see this difference in straight line speed, of course, aided along there by the slipstream, but the Honda is no slouch, despite being a very out-of-the-way option for many. We see that it is perfectly capable, especially on a track that it was designed to hot lap on. So if the Honda has not already been demonstrated, as we just saw from that move there up towards 4th place, if the Honda has not already been demonstrated as a very capable GT in the hands of Carlos Deege, where better to take it than the place where it quite literally grew up. It was forged to carve through tracks like this. It was designed on this very track. Honda still have a very, very close connection to this circuit, so much so that I believe in the last couple of years it has been the title sponsor of the Japanese Grand Prix on a few occasions. Honda, of course, still having a presence in Formula 1, albeit in a bit of a dark chapter for them in their time spent with Aston Martin. A significant drop-off into the 2026 era compared to their performance previously with Red Bull. Well, we had seen for Honda in Formula 1, it has been a real swings and roundabout situation. Some years they're very good, some years they're not. For every, 90s McLaren or late 2010s to early 2020s Red Bull, you've got your mid to late 2010s McLaren or your 2026 Aston Martin. We mentioned as well in our previous conversation surrounding the NSX that it is no longer a GT500 in the Japanese Super GT series, of which competes here at the Suzuka 300 kilometers. It's a case now where originally we said it was the Prelude. It's also the Civic as well, of course, Honda's flagship hatchback. It's been one of the most iconic hatchbacks of the last 100 years. Deege across the line there, 2 minutes, 0.555. So he is stepping closer to that fastest lap time here, trying to negate points away from Lee Evans, who leads Platinum right now in today's race, ahead of Leroy Donald in 2nd and Jaden Johnson-Ward in 3rd. Carlos Deege sets his sights from not too far away. Behind them looks to be a rather entertaining fight on the horizon between Ian Oates, Chris Davies and Kieran Rodd. Let's go to catch on board with those three as they make their way through to the S's. Coming into the pits before that, though, is Ben Dexter. After 15 minutes of racing, early pit strategy for the 247 in silver. He's into the pits from 18th. You see here, Osborne v Turner is now on the cards. You can see they're right on top of each other. This is for a division lead, mind you, in the bronze division. Connor Osborne defending from Callum Turner. In the overall fight for 13th place, this does stand locally as the fight for first for these two. 59.5 minutes left to go here in Suzuka. If you're joining us for action later on this week, 5 a.m. BST this Saturday will be the VPR 2 hours of Watkins Glen. And the day after that, a special round from the High Caliber Community League. We go live from Silverstone for the HCCL Silverstone Bring 'em All at 2 p.m. on Sunday. Otherwise, if I'm not mistaken, this week both sees action in the real world from the British Touring Car Championship, where they head to Knock Hill, and also from MotoGP, where they head to Silverstone. Connor Osborne out wide here at Spoon. This could open doors up for Callum Turner. Going to catch on board quickly here with Chris Davies as he continues to fend off Kieran Rodd. Meanwhile, in the background, we saw there just before 130R was O'Driscoll and Alexander, not too far from each other. Out through the Casio triangle. It's worth noting here, Jaden Johnson Ward continues to lead gold, but these two still find themselves hooked up on the fight for what remains of that gold division podium. Oates currently holds his ground from a fair distance from Davies. Davies could be losing out position here to Kieran Rodd. Rodd's on the inside. Oh my goodness, there. Leaving the pit lane was Ben Dexter. Had to hook himself onto the right-hand side of the track just to stay out of the way of the drivers romping down through on the racing line into turns 1 and 2. It's worth knowing here for gold, Ian Oates looks to try and extend that gap over Chris Davies. And to bring back up what our odds were looking like, their gold division lead currently is tapered by 14 points. Now, if they were to finish where they are, second and third, this is only a points difference of about 5 points, bringing it up to 19 points of a lead in favour of Ian Oates by the end of tonight's event. That would still leave it plenty capable to fight for the championship in Misano next week. Meanwhile, for Kieran Rodd, he's just carving through this field like we saw for Carlos Steege, like a hot knife through butter. His next target is Ian Oates. This could work wonders here for Chris Davies. That's so long as he can keep himself distant of John O'Driscoll, who is also looking to gain positions on him, because Ian Oates being knocked down a peg behind Kieran Rodd could force him onto the nose of Davies and reignite their chances to fight for a division second in the gold. Meanwhile, for Rodd, as far as it stands right now, this is division, I believe, division podium for Platinum, with Deesh second now with the fastest lap, and Evans still leading by 9.1 seconds to the nearest car now. It has been an incredibly dominant start by Lee Evans. I do imagine this is going to be a tough one to catch for Carlos Deesh. To which then the 54 likely saying challenge accepted, because you can see right now he's already onto the back of the third place car. Jaden Johnson Ward leading gold, now about to meet the 54 head on. Down the opening straight, the Lamborghini, 4 additional cylinders over that Honda, but even then is struggling to keep that NSX off of him. Down through to turns 1 and 2. 5.2 litre V10 versus 3.5 litre V6 twin turbo. This is a tough matchup between these two. And really pushed through it though, Honda can develop one hell of an engine, and so too can the Audi Lamborghini group when it came to that 5.2. One of the most iconic soundtracks in GT racing, that V10, I think only closely, if not thwarted by the car just up in front of them. 4 litre flat 6 Porsche 911. You'll know when a Porsche's on track, and you'll certainly know when either an Audi or a Lamborghini are on track, because they have 2 of the most distinctive engine notes in modern GT. Sadly, in the case of one, that time is now at its end with the introduction of the Temerario and the dissolution of the R8. It was fun while it lasted, though. Fortunately here, we don't get updates on ACC anymore, so we're not getting the Temerario. So we can still hear the V10 all we want. Looking at the nearest fights then, Oates v Rodd is still very much so on the cards. Behind them is Davies v O'Driscoll. Again, Platinum clashing with Gold during this time. Further down the line, there is still the fight for the lead here. Connor Osborne versus Callum Turner in the bronze division. Now, as far as it would still stand, regardless of where he finishes here, Callum Turner will overtake the bronze division lead coming up in towards round 8, though will not take the championship until the end of next round on the current form he's been on here. Will lead by 7 points from second. Otherwise, that gap will come up even further if he is to take that bronze division win. Looking further up through the order, Carlos Deesh, just before 130R, had the third place spot off of Jaden Johnson Ward. He'll still lead gold. It does drop him now directly into the iron sights of Ian Oates. That could still change with Kieran Rodd hounding him from behind here. Through the Casio triangle we go. And number 6 still holding out strong. We saw was perhaps either a little bit of oversteer or a moment of hesitation to come to the pits early for Kieran Rodd. That nonetheless does drop a little bit of distance off there of the rear bumper of Ian Oates' Ferrari. Behind them, Chris Davies, John O'Driscoll and Alan Alexander. A swap of position there. O'Driscoll waving on through Alan Alexander. Now that is a curiosity. Now when one considers that, as far as anyone knows, at least right now, John O'Driscoll is not affiliated with Eurotitans Endurance, of which is the team we see drivers like Kieran Rodd, like Alan Alexander, like Carlos Deesh, and like Fake Galaxy, among several others we've seen here on TRTN. So what reason had O'Driscoll to start playing nice all of a sudden with the Euro Titans cars, especially in the case of Alan Alexander, where he knew he held the position up ahead of him. Alexander was technically supposed to start out in front of him, but ended up being moved to the pit lane. Many such questions to be asked in the next 2 weeks here. We could be seeing kindlings of something they've yet to properly announce to us. Also, speaking of things that have yet to have been announced to us, we did want to cover it on the news, but we still don't have any concise information. It was announced that on August 5th, which is today, the time of recording, there was going to be an announcement from Silverstone regarding a partnership with the Circuit of the Americas. That still, as we're speaking, has yet to be actually discussed. Now, I imagine when I get off of this recording today, we might actually have more information, so that will be one very curiously watched on by us here. Of course, things have been rather peachy for Silverstone. They just recently reacquired the World Endurance Championship with the Silverstone 6 Hours. That'll be joining the calendar from 2027 onwards. As for the Circuit of the Americas, they're joining Formula E as the Austin E-Prix. You see then a little moment of hesitation from Rod just out in front to try and dive on Ian Oates. Meanwhile, we see here for Chris Davies holding down the fort from 7th place. 2 platinums on his tail with Alexander. The battle cruiser that is the Bentley Continental, the 315, because he am eclipsing that McLaren. There is nowhere the Bentley can hide. It's like watching a grizzly bear hide behind a tree. You just know he's there. He's not making much of a job to hide himself. The monstrously large Bentley, which I am surprised to say is around the same weight as the McLaren up in front of him. It's a work of witchcraft to get that car to be the same regulation weight for GT3 racing, but they did manage. They did manage with the Continental, and it's a pity we don't see it more often in GT racing. It is a tremendous bit of kit. And if I had any mind about me, I'd assume that Bentley might be still curious on developing more from the Continental. They're in a bit of a slump at the moment, and we do see a bit of a slump here with the 315 losing out position to O'Driscoll at turn 7. Meanwhile, Ian Oates holds off Kieran Rod at the Degners, but this could come to a bit of a swell here off the exit of turn 9. They are all bunched up now. 5 cars contesting 6th place. 5th place, I should say, my mistake there, with Ian Oates leading the charge over Rod, Davies, O'Driscoll and Alexander. Meanwhile, Davies out wide. O'Driscoll could be looking for the run on the inside there at the hairpin, but he's to the outside at the following corner at turn 12. Davies v O'Driscoll is a very curious one here, because if he can ride the wave, O'Driscoll will still be to the inside for the run into Spoon, and he is still on the inside there. Number 420 side by side, now ahead of the 28. Took a risk and ran with it. That's some tremendous guts to do what he's just done there, because that could have ended any which way, none of which too pretty. We see here looking for the inside. Could we be seeing the fated 130R swing that we saw so famously executed in a battle between Schumacher and Alonso back in the 2000s in Formula 1? Sadly, not on this day. There is still plenty of action to follow into the Casio Triangle, because I don't think these two are quite yet finished. Their score is not settled. Meanwhile, then, we see for Chris Davies now falling in behind Alan Alexander. He will be beside himself with fury, now having lost this much ground off to Ian Oates. Now, of course, it still accounts for the same points division. They are still 2nd and 3rd in gold. They've now got quite a tremendous number of platinums piled up in between them. Meanwhile, down to 17 cars, so sadly one withdrawal from today's event. We now find ourselves with 50 minutes left to go. Our latest developments now reveal Carlos Diege having overtaken Leroy Donald. Now with his sights set on the overall and platinum lead, Lee Evans 10 seconds away. That is not an easy bit of news to go down here for the 44. Knowing now his defensive barrier against Carlos Diege has been completely shattered, there is nothing left to stand between him and the 54 behind. 10.9 seconds. He has had a great start. We said this one could definitely have been a challenge for Carlos Diege, but he has massively taken to that challenge. Both arms swinging here in the 54. Is now only 10 seconds away. That could be less by the time we get to the next interval. Leroy Donald will continue to lead silver and is still on the charts here to complete his run of the championship in tonight's event, so long as he can finish ahead of Sean McNally down in a division 4th, otherwise 12th. Meanwhile, we see black and orange flag given to the 96, I believe there. That is for Robert Ogan. See, his headlights have not come on. And that does present itself a bit of a danger here, going back on board to what is an absolute tidal wave of machinery pouring down through the 130R. So we see here Ian Oates now swamped in by Kieran Rodd and John O'Driscoll. Right behind him is Alan Alexander as they pour out through 130R. And this is a tremendous sight indeed, packed in like sardines for the run up towards the Casio Triangle. It's contact between the original duo. The 420 collides with the 61 and keeps on running. A dark chapter looms over these two comrades on the grid, but now that could be a very uneasy feeling for these two on the run in towards that final round. A bit of a shocker there, late onto the brakes, slammed the 61, but didn't even try in that moment to give it back. Now he faces off against the number 315 for Ian Oates. He tucks in behind Alan Alexander. Behind him, though, is that, if I'm not mistaken here, having a glance, is, yes, that of Chris Davies. So this has come up very, very nicely here for Davies. He does have the chance to now get the leg up on the number 6 on your screens at the moment. Much like in the talks surrounding the Platinum lead, there is now nothing separating this fight for Gold P2. Now, the Gold lead still held firmly by the 363 Lamborghini of Jaden Johnson-Ward in 4th place overall. But there's been a lot of drama for one day in that mid of the top 10. O'Driscoll v Alexander, the latest on the chapter there from Platinum after the drama between O'Driscoll and Rodd at the Casio Triangle, the lap just gone. Meanwhile, P2 for Gold, right in the middle of it all there, Ian Oates versus Chris Davies. Looking down the order, Callum Turner looks to fight with Sean McNally. Curiosity when one considers that Turner leading bronze at the moment, trying to fight with McNally, 4th place in silver. It's got to catch on board, though, with more action from the middle of that top 10, because I really don't think we've seen the height of action just yet from these drivers. There's still a lot more to give in this moment. Let's go to see from the 315 in pursuits of O'Driscoll. This is Alan Alexander's point of view of things in the upcoming fight for P5. Now, as far as it stands, this is the last of the Platinum podium positions we're talking about. So locally speaking, it's a fight for 3rd. Overall, though, it's a fight for 5th. As they exit the Casio Triangle, better of the two on exit there was the Bentley. You can see hammering down that 4-litre twin-turbo V8. 2 extra cylinders on the Ferrari, and you can see he's got quite a bit of straight-line speed worth talking about there. As going for the inside, now holding it in towards turns 1 and 2. Could there be some counter-attack here from the Ferrari? Not as it would appear. Off the exit of the first turn, now up to 5th goes Alan Alexander. You can see that night and day difference, though, in terms of stability in these sweeping corners where the car needs a better center of rotation. The Ferrari can cling to that inside line, and it's just about fine. It's only until we start getting onto the throttle where the Ferrari starts losing more of its distance to the Bentley. Once he gets his footing about him, that Bentley has got quite a shove. Especially then in the hands of this one, the 315 of Alan Alexander. And we've seen quite a fair few standout drivers of the Bentley Continental, some that spring to mind. Florian Oxman, Nat Bennett, I believe also at a time, I believe was Will Friedman as well, did get behind the wheel of the Bentley. David Tanguay we saw behind the wheel of the Bentley. Alan Alexander definitely in that Bentley Hall of Fame. Of course, Oxman and Bennett were 2 of the most prominent of the 787 lineup during the NLRL Console Endurance Series Season 2, where they dominated for Exclusive Esports. There were quite a few different drivers that did get behind the wheel of that Bentley, but the 2 most prominent over the course of the season was Oxman and Bennett. You see then with Alan Alexander, this is the sort of next generation, as it were, of Bentley excellence in console ACC. The 315, we've seen him with a fair few different cars. We've seen him with Porsche, we've seen him with Mercedes. I believe at one point we might have even seen him with Ford, but the Bentley era has been the most prominent, I would say, for Alexander in his console ACC career, so to speak. And if this stands as a bridgehead in towards PC esports in the future for him, he's got quite a lot of experience now with a car very out of the ordinary. So if he can handle the unorthodox here on ACC, I would say he can more than definitely handle the orthodox on games like LMU and iRacing. There's a bright future coming up ahead for this one if he's not already made that leap himself. Of course, we don't know 100% about these drivers and their daily routines. So taking a look in here, this is the latest of fights coming from Oates, Davies and Rod. Triple header through the S's. As we follow here from Chris Davies, two-time VSR champion. Very, very experienced driver on this grid. He knows a lot of these drivers implicitly. He knows their kind of driving habits, so he's got a lot of wisdom about him when it comes to his driving. Right now, though, that McLaren is a bit of a struggle, especially against the Ferrari, because even when we saw there the matchup between O'Driscoll and Alexander, when it came to the Ferrari v Bentley matchup, you see that the Ferrari is itself no slouch. It has got quite a bit of a thump to it. When you get onto throttle, it just couldn't hold a candle to the Bentley. We see then right behind them is the naturally aspirated Lamborghini Huracan of Kieran Rod. You see at the moment, held in a bit of an uneasy armistice, one would say. The 28 held away from the number 6, with the 61 still hounding for position. We step ever closer to the midway on today's race, not too far off of that by about 10 or so minutes. And so taking a look out on the wider scope of things right now, Lee Evans continues to lead by double figures, 10.2 seconds in the last interval to Carlos Deesh in second. Leroy Donald leads silver from third place overall. Jaden Johnson-Ward leads gold from fourth overall. Alan Alexander recently into that top 5. We see behind him is John O'Driscoll in 6th. Ian Oates holding 7th at the moment from Chris Davies right behind him there in 8th. These two are the championship rivals to be in gold. Behind them, Kieran Rod 9th. Julian Akwati rounds out the top 10 in silver. Milan Picorni in 11th, McNally 12th, Turner 13th, Ogan 14th, Osborne 15th, Tishvari in 16th, and Dexter 17th. And getting to grips with it now, I believe the driver that did withdraw was sadly Giovanni Palumbo, the number 88 Porsche. Into the pit lane goes the number 28, that's Chris Davies in, so withdrawing from his efforts to fight with Ian Oates. He was caught up in quite a vice there between Oates and Rod. So coming into the pits goes the McLaren, playing things a little bit earlier now. The earlier strategy can work wonders for these drivers. It does create a bit of a breaker in the action for them over the course of a race. And it does create a bit of a pocket of no traffic. So they've got plenty of time to bed in those new Pirellis without the threat of being overtaken or being intercepted. Meanwhile, we see for Kieran Rod still fighting with Ian Oates off the Degners here at turns 8 and 9, up towards turns 10 and 11. Just under 7 tenths between the two. You can see that's quickly closing in for the braking zone into turn 11. Ferrari versus Lamborghini. We spoke many a time during this season about their rivalry on the road as opposed to on the track, but we do see here things have been quite lively between these two rivals. Going to catch on board then with Oates v Rod. And Ian Oates has had a very sort of stable grip of the wheel here over the course of this event so far. He's been very, very difficult to shake off of his pedestal. It's this steely determination behind his driving ethic today that is yielding such positive results for him. It's what's going to keep him in the lead of that championship if he can hold the ground off of Chris Davies. Now, he'll need to hope that his pit strategy still lines up with something that can counteract that earlier run by Davies. But right now, we can see he's a very tough cookie to crack. So it's no surprise then he's been doing so well today. Into the pits he goes. And leaves Rod up to 7th. Oates now in, so I was quite surprised there and taken aback by a bit to see this almost immediate counter by Ian Oates. We would have thought maybe he'd stick to his guns for a few more minutes here. We are coming up about 4 minutes now from the midway. We would have thought maybe another lap or maybe even 2 just at the midway mark before he would come into the pit lane, but no, he is looking to play things a little bit more reactively. That could provide some interesting turns in today's fight for that gold P2 as it stands. We're looking here at the fight for 4th place between gold P1 and platinum P3. Alan Alexander now intercepts Jaden Johnson-Ward. Now, the last time we saw Jaden Johnson-Ward, before this season, of course, was actually, funnily enough, in this car, the Bentley Continental. I believe this was during the MSC GT3 season in our coverage on TRTN. So this new move, after months of not seeing him on any grids, now seeing him with Lamborghini, we can see that his time spent away from the Continental has been one that has opened up quite a fair few doors for him, because this performance with Lamborghini is quite something to behold. He leads gold at the moment by quite a significant margin. The nearest gold driver just came into the pit lane. So Jaden Johnson-Ward has got a very sizable chance here at having a look at the previous wins, claiming on what could very well be his first gold win of the season. Last win, though, went to Chris Davies. And before that was Antonio Angeletta. Before that was Grady and Zuzi. You see, though, that P4 might not be for him to control much longer, as after going very, very raucous down through 130R, then leaps to the brakes here at the Casio Triangle. Great move by Alexander. What's the call there by Johnson-Ward? He'll stay out. Only a few more minutes from the halfway mark here. Lee Evans continues to lead, and the gap only having moved by about a second there. In the case of Carlos Dish, he's caught up behind, I believe that's Andres Tijavari at this time, that he was caught up behind, yes, as he just makes his way up and around the Porsche through the S's. He could have lost a bit of time there. He's second with the fastest lap. Leroy Donald in third. Alan Alexander now to fourth, as we saw that move at the Casio just off of 130R. A very, very risky run, but one that he was more than happy to accept. Alexander now fourth, with Jaden Johnson-Ward rounding out the top five. O'Driscoll sixth, Rod seventh. Picorni now in the pit lane from eighth. McNally ninth will move up to eighth. Turner moves up to ninth from 10th. Robert Ogan will enter the top 10 over the course of this lap. Osborne behind. Will he come into the pit lane? Yes. That leaves Oates 13th, Davies 14th, Aquati in 15th, Tishavari in 16th, and Dexter in 17th. As you just heard there, halfway through on the race, so still around 37.5 minutes left to go. And still one of the closest fights is the rebuttal now of that recent exchange for fourth place between Jaden Johnson-Ward and Alan Alexander. The other nearest fight here would be Turner v. Ogan. The exit of turn 7 at this time. In the pit lane then, Milan Picorni and Connor Osborne. Callum Turner stays out to take that lead in the bronze division. Bear in mind he'll be overtaking Ryan Castle's absent lead of that championship. Castle not available for the grid tonight. Does leave the throne vacant for Callum Turner. Milan Picorni off exit now of the pit lane. Now he goes from 14th place. Connor Osborne still yet to have dropped the jacks there. I believe there could be some signs of possible damage. Following him into the pit lane, though, we see here is Carlos Dish. And the sound of that flat 6 means one thing. That's Leroy Donald. Alan Alexander will stay out with the sound of a V10 coming in. Means Jaden Johnson-Ward's coming in here. We see the number 363 from originally 5th place is now in. He drops a position there to John O'Driscoll. Kieran Rod stays out. So therein which remains the question now for Lee Evans. Seeing that Carlos Dish has come into the pit, is he willing to accept the possibility that Dish is now trying an undercut strategy on him to drop some of that distance away? He only was able to chip in about a second on that gap from 10 to 9 seconds. He'd cleared every hurdle before that point, but this seemed to have been the glass ceiling for the 54 up until his pit stop. So what exactly will be the counterplay by Evans? 35.5 minutes left to go in today's event. Jaden Johnson-Ward now leaving the pit lane as it stands at the moment. It does raise the question, will he lose the gold division lead? Right now, with Oates just off exit there at the Casio Triangle, Davies in pursuit from him as well. That means that Jaden Johnson-Ward, having a quick glance through things here, will continue to lead in the gold division. It's only platinums up front at the moment with Evans, Alexander, O'Driscoll and Rod. Then Sean McNally of the silver division. Then that of Callum Turner of the bronze division. Then Robert Ogan, Dish, Donald. And then you get to the first of the gold tier with Jaden Johnson-Ward. So he is securing what could very likely in the next 34 minutes be his first gold division win of the season. It has been a very, very strong performance from the 363 throughout today's race. We just had some unofficial odds given to us here by Antonio Angeletta, previous time gold division winner in this season. 100 to 1 odds that Evans misses his pit stop and ends up second. I'm not a gambling man, but I don't know what the odds look like there, whether or not that's strong or not, so I can't in good faith encourage it. But still interesting nonetheless. Well, I'm pretty sure that means if you put down £2, if it's a 100 to 1 odd, wouldn't that mean it's 200 quid payout? That's not too bad. But now that Evans knows that people are betting against him, I think there's going to be extra care paid towards that pit stop. In the pit lane as well, Callum Turner and Sean McNally. Of course, there is still the elephant in the room here, being that of Leroy Donald. So long as he can finish ahead of Sean McNally, that 51-point gap will stay even larger than 51 points. He only needed 38 after the end of today's event to secure the championship. So we are right now on the cards of seeing a championship made in tonight's event. There's still 3 more to be won in Misano next week as far as it stands right now, with no significant changes that would otherwise wrap out the championship in either platinum, gold or bronze, though there are likely coming up to be regime changes in platinum and by looks of it bronze as well. For Alan Alexander, right now as he's tucked in behind Lee Evans and possibly even behind Carlos Dish, he will get incredibly close to Fate Galaxy, and if Fate Galaxy doesn't make an appearance into the next event, there is a very sizable chance that Alan Alexander could contest a championship title in platinum. That does teeter massively on what has been an already spotty attendance record for Fate Galaxy this season. Following here with Leroy Donald. As right now he awaits to see into the pit lane Robert Ogan, the last of the Silvers to take a pit stop run in today's event. 31 minutes left to go. Lee Evans is of course still heavily under the scalpel here as we continue to watch whether or not... Oh, in the background there, that's one of the Ferraris. Is that... It's the number 29, I want to say that was there. Yes, that's Milan Piconi. And the Degners, big trouble for him. That drops him right into the iron sights of Sean McNally. Again, still under the knife here. We are still very curious to see whether or not Evans will be coming into the pits on this lap. What is his counter strategy to Carlos Dish? Right now, he's only 5 seconds out from approaching the nearest car, that being Robert Ogan in the number 96. So he is about to make his way back up into the top 5. Whether Ogan comes into the pits or not, he is closing in. He can sense the blood in the water. What is going to be the call for the 44? 31 minutes left to go here in Suzuka. Into the pits then goes Evans. That's what we've been waiting to see. 21 laps in. Now into the pit lane he goes. Alan Alexander would be next into the question here as to whether or not he'll come in or try and go for a long strategy. We've seen, historically speaking, he's willing to roll the dice on strategy before. And today looks to be the case. He stays out. What of O'Driscoll then? Down through the Casio triangle. They're not too far away from him will be that of Kieran Rod. O'Driscoll stays out. As for Rod, as Alexander now leads here in Suzuka, Evans having come into the pit a moment ago, will lose 3 positions as Rod stays out. 30 minutes left to go. Just lingering in the background here of the number 96 of Robert Ogan is Carlos Dish by 4.1 seconds. The Honda closing on him down towards 130R. So it remains the question, will he be coming into the pits on this lap as well? Of course, the one that Evans has to watch out for here is Carlos Dish, who is only a few corners away. Evans is off the jack, so he's racing to the exit of the pits there for the pit limiter line and will likely retain that lead. Robert Ogan stays out. Carlos Dish not too far behind him. Evans retains that provisional platinum lead, but there in which remains the question for the last 3 platinums to take their mandatory pit stop is going to be that of Alan Alexander, John O'Driscoll and Kieran Rod, all of which started towards the back today. Along with them was that of Carlos Dish. Will likely retain a P2 at barest minimum here for the Platinum division, as he now looks to intercept the last of the top 5 positions. Trouble there for Davies. Hang on just a moment. We do find the yellow flags out in Sector 3 after 130R. Davies in serious trouble. If he withdraws from this event, this is dire for him. As right now, this could form up the basis of a possible Gold Division Championship for Ian Oates. We'll take a look at the odds of it in a moment's time, but if Chris Davies withdraws, that could seal it. We're back in a green flag conditions. Now, if I had to take a swinging guess as to what's happened for him down there, he has the 28 now withdraws. So that's likelier than not to be a DNF. So as it stands right now in the Gold Division, Ian Oates is in Division 2nd, with Jaden Johnson-Ward leading that division, meaning that he'll take home 27 points over what was already a points gap at the head of Gold at this time of 14 points to benefit of Ian Oates, meaning if it is the case where Chris Davies' points are not counted because of that DNF in today's event, that would mean that Ian Oates, so long as he finishes this event now where he is, will take the Gold Division Championship, as he will lock out by over 38 points that of Chris Davies. Now we're going to run a few checks here to see whether or not DNFing drivers are actually given points. As it stands right now, and this has been a very odd technicality, they are. And this is something that race controllers really eager to address into the run of next season. So sadly, we can't confirm anything for Ian Oates as of right now. Had this been in a real race scenario where the DNF cars get no points, of course, as is almost a given, I would say, then this is the championship made manifest for the number 6. Meanwhile, in the pits is Rod and Ogan. Meanwhile, we see here for Evans, that gap has come down by half of its original distance from 10 to 5 seconds. So you can see just lingering around the start of turn 7 as Evans makes his way out, is that of Carlos Dish with Honda. In the last interval, though, having a quick glance, 5.4 seconds. There is an advance here being cited for the 54. Still under question here would be the 315 and the 420. Still yet to have come to the pits themselves. They're the last two out here without a currently served mandatory pit stop. The 420, about 8.3 seconds from this one here. Alan Alexander in the 315 Bentley out through the Casio triangle. No dice yet on a run to the pit lane. We'll see for the 420 as they make their way round through turn 16 through 18. They stay out as well. Now imagine sitting in Oates' seat at the moment. This would be quite a rather frustrating turn of events because on paper he's got it. That championship is going to come into his lap by the end of this round. But because of that issue with SimGrid, where, and I don't believe this was ever an intended feature, I highly doubt it, that the cars that, say for example, finish 15, 18 laps down, something like that, are still being given points because they showed up over a DNS, which gives you nothing. It seems right now, because they're being given just the raw results data, they're not being given what would classify something as a DNF. We see there the frustrations relayed to us by Antonio Angeletto, of course, has been intimately involved with the running of the season in terms of its back-end systems on SimGrid. And it's a case where the package they used this season had sort of screwed them over, so to speak. That's in his own words. So he will technically get points, but how many remains to be seen. Well, so long as he's actually taking home points right now, as far as it stands for the Gold Division, that would place Davies in, looking here, 3rd. Meaning right now he'd be bringing back 22 points, meaning the gap only advances from 14 to 19 with a 5-point advantage in the court of Ian Oates. That's before factoring fastest laps, which are still calculated on a class-by-class basis. We know the fastest overall is Carlos Dish in Platinum. 315 stays out, 24 minutes to go. O'Driscoll is in, so now that leaves Alan Alexander, the last of the old guard here, to not come in for their first mandatory pit stop. John O'Driscoll now in the 420. Lee Evans still trying to put distance on Carlos Dish, but it seems like he's only prolonging the inevitable as he makes his way to 130 off in the distance there. The Honda number 54 of Carlos Dish. There's definitely some fire in the lungs here of that 54 since having lost out that win in Monza over on the Sunday League. It was a very recent announcement from Sunday League Race Control over on NLRL that post-race investigation had the first ever Honda victory, of which we reported live on TRTN, has now been rescinded. So you can imagine in his position, he's lost out on what has been a landmark victory, and now we'll have to do that all over again. So he's taking, I imagine, just a little bit of that anger out on the field today. We had the opportunity a few seasons ago to speak with Carlos Dish when he became Rookies Champion on the NLRL Sunday League, and from what we gather of him, he's a very sort of contempt, very calm mentality on the grid. And that's the scariest one to go up against, I imagine, because a driver who doesn't lose their head is a driver that is incredibly well disciplined. So that's a case where Carlos Dish has been unshakable in his resolve throughout thick and thin there. Very difficult to knock him down and have him not get back up. And we now see he's almost toying with the grid with his most recent strategy of starting from the back alongside O'Driscoll, Alexander and Rod. Whether or not it's customary at Euro Titans or whether or not they're all taking out the same book of O'Driscoll as the sort of wider back row bandits group that we dubbed here on TRTN back in our time covering the VSR GT3 Championship. I think it was as far back as season 8 is when they started cropping up. But really their history is quite a prolonged one here. Looking further down the line, there is an ongoing fight between the two Porsches in silver. This is for the last of the top 5 spots in silver. Andres Tichavari in the blue and yellow versus the black and green of Robert Ogan. Meanwhile, an update on that gap here. 5 seconds as of the last interval. And that could still drop to beneath 5 seconds between Evans and Dish. Still no update for the 315. 21.5 minutes left to go. Quickly dropping onto the last 20 minutes of racing here in Suzuka. Let's go to have a glance around the field. Milan Picorni could soon be intercepted by Sean McNally, the number 4 in pursuits here. Will sadly miss out on his opportunity of a Silver Division Championship. It was an interesting time seeing his debut to what was originally the VSR GT3 Championship, of which this series is now the successor to. And it has been I believe he did make his debut back in the same season we spoke of before, season 8, where he made his debut to bronze, originally under the username Shawnee Mac. But McNally has really grown in the time since first having seen him in that series, and now is a prominent part of that Silver Division. And it's a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, really, to see him miss out on the opportunity of that Silver Division Championship. But I would say this is a case where, like we spoke of for Carlos Dish, McNally is not an easy driver to knock down and not have get back up. He's definitely rolled with the punches over the last couple of seasons. So it'll be very curious to see what becomes of the number 4. Would I say he's ready for gold? I don't believe I'd be qualified enough to answer on his behalf. That's really down to the driver. If they think they can have a go, by all accounts, let him. 20 minutes left to go here in Suzuka. So looking at the recent developments on the gap between Dish and Evans does reveal an interesting piece of information. The last interval showed 5.0. We're now half a second in positive here for Lee Evans. He's put half a second on Carlos Dish, further trying to solidify his aims of a first platinum win this season. Carlos Dish, albeit has by his own volition deliberately handicapped himself for this round by starting from the back and has carved his way back up through the field because it makes a win all the more impressive. We saw that from Alan Alexander in Silverstone last week. Now we see here from Dish, where last week saw Bentley win on their home track, could see Honda win at what is quite literally their home track. As without Honda, Suzuka as a circuit would simply not exist. Had it not been for Honda, we'd be racing, more than likely, at Fuji today. Which to some, I imagine, could be considered an upgrade, but I like to look at things with a fairly level mindset. Having only driven at Suzuka on this game a few times, it is a tough track, but I wouldn't say one that I despise in the same way that some do. It is a bit of a Marmite track. We've seen many like them in the history of console sim racing here on ACC. There's a lot of tracks that split the crowd, and another one is coming up right after this round at Misano, another circuit that does split the masses. Some love it, some hate it. There's a lot to be spoken for these two tracks, but I think still at the end of the day, it's these ones where you can see the drivers struggle a little bit is what makes for much more entertaining racing, because it puts them through their paces. Watching a driver in their element on a track they are more than definitely comfortable at racing at is one thing, but seeing them push to the limit on a track where they don't quite know if they can hack it at this speed is another thing entirely. It's this sort of raw intensity that you don't often get in GT racing because of its complacency, I would say, for some leagues, to use a lot of the same tracks, a lot of the by-the-book approach. You do get a lot of the same tracks cropping up, but this unfamiliarity creates these wonderful opportunities for these drivers. We're seeing at the moment, it is creating one hell of a one for Lee Evans, because he's now some 6 seconds up after a little bit of a power slide there from the Honda of Carlos Dish. Alan Alexander, I am told, is now into the pit lane, so that is certainly quite a bit of news here, as it will promote the 44 up to the race lead. Behind him there, you can see it's Connor Osborne in the number 17. That's the bronze division McLaren in 15th. Currently, Callum Turner leads that division, further up in 12th. Now retaking the race lead, Lee Evans back on form here. The 44 is now on the home stretch, and having in his last lap taken the fastest lap, 2 minutes .270. He is looking at the full pot here, 38 points to grab in this round, and looking back in towards those platinum standings. Now, while we were more closely discussing the gap between Alexander and Galaxy, Evans could certainly have a go here, because he's going to leap up to the podium. He's going to go up and ahead of Declan Anderson, who sadly isn't with us for tonight's round of the championship, but we see here with Alan Alexander, moreover, where he ends up on the grid at the moment, as Alexander re-emerges, and I believe here just tucked in behind Leroy Donald. So he is in Platinum P3. So from where it stands at the moment, that's a points difference of about 11 points. These two will be 11 points apart on the run in towards the final round of the championship, roughly speaking there. On the run in towards today's event, they were 22 points apart, so I don't think this is one so clear-cut between Alexander and the absent fake Galaxy. I think this is one certainly with a lot more layers to it, with the recent spur of confidence brought on here by Lee Evans, a driver who carved his way through a Gold's Championship over on VSR. It was one of the greatest rivalries we saw, was Evans v Oates. It was a tremendous thing to watch in that last season in our coverage of, I believe it was season 11 or season, I believe this is season 12, technically speaking. I'll have a look into that one as we continue to watch on here with that of Lee Evans. 15.5 minutes left to go. It was season 11. I'm not getting ahead of myself there. It's so easy to mix up all the numbers, though, I tell you that much for free, because it's we cover 8 or 9 series during the summer. It's difficult to keep track of absolutely every fine detail, but we do our very best to try. We see here, this is the fight for the podium overall between the Platinum P3 and Silver Division lead. So this is Leroy Donald versus Alan Alexander for the last of the overall podium positions. We are seeing here V6 against Flat 6. Not V6, V8 versus Flat 6. I'd certainly say that's an odd-sounding V6 in the Continental. They're used to more often seeing the matchup between Ferrari and Porsche, hence the V6 v Flat 6 moniker, but this is certainly a unique look of things here. You see then, he's scoping up a look for the inside here, but the issue faced by the 315, and this is one of the downsides of his choice, as tremendous as the Bentley has been, as competitive it's been in his hands, he is still playing against some unavoidable truths surrounding that car, and the elephant in the room, quite literally, is its size. It is a huge car. You can see it dwarfs that Porsche. The Porsche, it's no petite machine. This is one of the larger GT3s, the Porsche, just by its enormous width. But the Bentley, it's something else entirely. I mean, any larger, and that Porsche does run the risk of being sucked into the radiator. It's sort of how, like, people used to make quite the comedic notes about the, I think it was the BMW M8 GTE over on the IMSA Sports Car Championship before the end of the GTE era, how just huge that machine was. The Bentley certainly is along that same line of juggernauts in GT3, the last of the old guard when it comes to the larger GT3s. The Ford keeps that torch lit, but I don't even think that comes close here to the Bentley in terms of its size. The Ford, it's a big car, but this is a huge car we're talking about with the Continental, hence the name. I think we made the note a few weeks ago. Do you think they called it Continental because they wanted it to sound fancy, or just to give you a perspective on the size they measure it in? You see, though, despite all of the jokes around its size, one thing is just as mighty as its mass on the grid, and that is the fighting spirit of the driver behind it. As we see there from around the outside at turns 1 and 2, that is absolutely jaw-dropping from Alan Alexander. Have a look at that on the replays there. Smooth as butter from the 315 from around the outside of the first turn. The Porsche, very difficult to get out-braked on. But lo and behold, we've got here, I mean, this is the equivalent of dogfighting with a Zeppelin. And somehow, Alan Alexander is moving like the Red Baron. Leroy Donald, and I imagine, just like us here, has his jaw firmly in his lap on the run through to the Degners. 12 minutes left to go then here in Suzuka. A little bit out wide there went Alexander. Meanwhile, a look at the front of the field. Evans still holds in the last interval the lead by 5.9 seconds. He's only a few more laps to go here, roughly 5 or so, as we make our way into the next lap coming off the exit of Spoon, before he can find himself with his first win of the season. Meanwhile, for Leroy Donald, oh, so you saw in the background, that was trying to see who that was. It was Ben Dexter. The number 247 in trouble. Yellow flags are out at turns 11. He gets back up and running, so no harm, no foul there. A spin around at turn 11, but he's still operational here. No damages to the 247. Meanwhile, let's go to Catch on board here with what looks to be one of the closer fights. At a point there was within a 1/10 of a second is this one here, the fight for 12 between Robert Ogan and Callum Turner. I'll leave you on board with Ogan and be back to you in a moment. So 10 minutes left to go. We're still on board here with Robert Ogan as he now sheds away a 1.1 second gap over Callum Turner for the fight of 12th place. Looking back up towards the front of the field, it's 5.4 seconds now at the head between Lamborghini and Honda, as Evans and Deesh look to be on a collision course in the next 9 minutes. Further down the line, the nearest fight now emerging in the silvers, Milan Picorni versus Sean McNally. This is for 3rd in silver, otherwise 10th overall. Picorni defending, McNally on the attack. For McNally, just savouring what he can of the end of this race, knowing that his championship prospects are not going to be coming up positive for him by the end of today, as the championship is about to be sealed should they finish where they are in the case here of Leroy Donald. 51-point gap on the run in towards today's event. If he is to finish where he is, he'll lock that out. Only needed 38 points to lock things out today. at the end of this round. So he's going to be looking at that championship, the first of the 4 divisions to do so, I should point out as well, as Callum Turner is looking to overtake Ryan Castle, who's absent from today's grid. That's possibly the same story riding on the line here for Alan Alexander, though he'll sit a few points short of Fate Galaxy's leader, the championship. Lee Evans could certainly come up into question here, holding the full 38 points with a win and fastest lap on the cards here in the next 8.5 minutes. That could still change, though. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Meanwhile, for gold, it's a case where, in the absence of Chris Davies, who DNF'd from this race, logistically speaking, or logically speaking, I should say, we're not talking logistics here, logically speaking, Ian Oates would be looking at a championship title, but because of the way that the SimGrid package right now for this season is handling things, that would still award Davies points. It has been quite a controversial subject over the course of the season, one that Race Control has already vented their frustrations over. So for Oates, it is a case where he'll have to fight one more round before he can lock the lid, so to speak, on a gold championship title. Fortunately for him, though, he is going to hold the cards by an additional 5 points over his current lead, so it's 19 points by looks of things from where they stand on the estimated championship tracker between Oates and Davies at the head of gold. As for silver, of course, that's about to lock out. 7.5 minutes left to go. Battling here at Suzuka has started to come down. It's starting to simmer out a little bit. The closest we had was Picorni v McNally, but that comes out to 1.2 seconds, leaving things up in the air as to whether or not we'll see a reignition on that fight for a podium in silver and a fight for the last of the top 10 positions overall. As mentioned towards the earlier parts of today's stream, if you're joining us for action later on this week, this more pertains to the Twitch recording. If you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully by the time the week is out, all of these events will be available to watch on the TRTN YouTube channel. But coming up later on this week, 2 more events into the weekend. On Saturday morning, 5 AM BST, we're live from Watkins Glen International with a VPR 2 hours of Watkins Glen. And on Sunday, 2 PM BST, we'll be joining the HCCL crew from the Silverstone circuit and the HCCL Silverstone Bring 'em All. That's hosted in unison with, I believe it's FAFC. So that will actually, I believe, be our first time working alongside them. So that's going to be an interesting one as well. Coming up into next week, though, I believe it is going to be the first round of Season 7 of the TRC Sprint Cup EU Series. Do look forward to that one. And there is also the return after the summer break to the Fatch GT Season 11 Championship. And hopefully, onto Wednesday morning next week, we'll finally see Alton Park, or otherwise the next adjacent event of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series play out. For those who've been following us in the last couple of weeks, you'll have noted that we are now 3 weeks overdue on Alton Park, because every time we have tried to do it, there has been a tremendous amount of weather that knocks the power out of the servers and ultimately keeps us from being able to do the event because no one can connect. It has been a persistent issue, has been almost comedically badly timed now, and it kind of feels like we're all being roped in on part of a big joke here. I feel like Race Control, they are furious from last I heard over on Competizione Performance League, so it's definitely a bit of bad luck coming their way, some bad karma or something of that sorts over in Alton Park. They've called it the Alton Park curse now. Coming up in a few weeks' time then, August 16th, we'll see the first round of Season 7 of the NLRL Sunday League, powered by TRTN. The second season then, that TRTN will remain as the title sponsor, having taken over from Malwar Transport after a 5-season tenure. That's all in future course, as we now see the last 5 minutes of today's race begin in just a moment's time. We've been watching here with Sean McNally, 1.4 seconds from that fight for Division P3, otherwise P10 overall, as one of the closest, if not only, battles going on the field right now. Of course, there is still the game of chess being played out at the front here, the slow push and pull between Evans and Deesh, now down to 4.9 seconds as they head up into their last wad of laps today. You see here for John O'Driscoll, he's into that top 5. He's done very, very well, having started plumb last, 18th on today's grid. Now finds himself on the cards for a top 5. Now, this is closely looking at P4 for the Platinum drivers, so still a very, very solid hustle from the 420. I'm still perplexed by that rollover from earlier where he moved to one side and just allowed Alan Alexander on through. He didn't fight him whatsoever. Now, definitely a case where these two could be, you know, playing buddy-buddy a little bit on the grid. Of course, they have been following a lot of the same antics here alongside the rest of the back row bandits, with O'Driscoll being one of the founding members of that group we dubbed here on TRTM. But I don't know, maybe it could play into the hands of a possible future signing to Euro Titans. He has been very buddy-buddy with a lot of the ETE team now. You can see behind him there is Kieran Rods, who's also a founding member of the back row bandits. And of course, Carlos Deesh most recently joined their sort of little clique there at the back of the field. So it's definitely a curious one to follow here from the 420. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he is also competing in Season 7 of the Sunday League, so we'll be seeing plenty more of him on the run in towards the autumn as we start heading into what is going to be now coming up into the last couple of weeks of the sort of TRTN summer season as we head in towards autumn. Hopefully more events then on the horizon. Of course, autumn and winter is the esports hot season, as most of the summer is spent in esports, usually off on holiday for some. It's like with any other occupation, often a time where they end up going away for a while and everything picks back up towards the winter time when everyone's back at home. Also coming up later on into the next couple of months will be Season 2 of the Competizione Performance League World Series. Do look forward to that one. All of that, though, to be discussed in due course as we follow here with Carlos Deesh still in pursuit of Lee Evans. Now, in the last time we saw him, it was 4.9 seconds. It's now 5.1. That Lamborghini is playing very, very difficult to catch at the moment. And this has been a super, super razor-precise performance here from Lee Evans. And it is a proper breath of fresh air, I had to imagine, here for the 44. After weeks of turmoil with that Huracan, this is where it really hits the Goldilocks zone for him in the night time here in Suzuka. 2 minutes left to go. We are heading up in towards the last lap of racing in a moment's time for Lee Evans, where he could very likely take home his first win of the season on the penultimate round of this championship. We'll catch back on board with him in a moment's time. Taking a look around that field once again. Rod looking at a possible intercept here of O'Driscoll, but he's 3.7 seconds to clear in about 2 laps, so he's got quite a tall order to fill. So your current division leaders heading on into the last lap. From Platinum is Lee Evans. From Gold is that of Jaden Johnson-Ward. From Silver is Leroy Donald. And from Bronze is Callum Turner. We'll see, though, whether or not that changes. We see for Turner just beginning that penultimate lap, so he's still got quite some distance to cover before the end of today's race. Evans just gets on into that last lap now.
All right, man. The leader is on the final lap. Give it a final push.
That is precisely what Evans is going to need. One last push of things here at Suzuka. 4.5 seconds and dropping now as of the last interval. Carlos Deesh might have been keeping a little bit in the back pocket here on that Honda at its home race. On home soil for the NSX. To give one last shove into this last lap. We've seen that he runs the Euro Titans colour scheme over on the Sunday League, where the team's championship is in effect for them. But here has been one of the more striking appearances on this grid, because he's running the old Alpha Tauri livery and the number 10. And that is by and large one of the best liveries in this game. And of course, you know, it's easier to take a look at that at face value and say, well, that's just because it's an F1 livery wrapped around a GT3 car. You can't deny that of the last couple of teams to have cropped up in the last decade in Formula 1, Alpha Tauri was quite the looker. Well, yes, it was just in essence, was just a white and blue Toro Rosso. It was certainly a looker. And I would easily go as far to say it's been one of the most striking liveries of the last 10 years in Formula 1. And it works so, so well in GT3. In fact, I would say it even looks better on that Honda. As they head up through Spoon. We still watch in suspense here, because this is looking to be a tremendous turn of events coming up for the number 44. Only a few more corners to master before he finds himself in the possession of a trophy for today. 5.2 litres, 10 cylinders, the last of the V10s there, the Huracan. And when we thought this might have been a down-and-out decision for his move, Lee Evans proves today as he makes his way through to the Casio Triangle. It was a gamble absolutely worth taking. Off the exit of turns 16, 17 and 18, down towards the line we go here in Suzuka. The checkered flag is out, awaiting the arrival of the number 44. A tremendous performance today. Lee Evans wins in Suzuka. Unstoppable stuff there from the Lamborghini. Honda makes second place courtesy of Carlos Dish. In third will be Bentley with Alan Alexander. A great podium indeed for the Platinums, but we must note there is still another driver here to see wins today, and making his way down towards the line we see with Leroy Donald. This is going to be a very special moment for the number 14, as following away from the podium of Platinum drivers, he leads the charge for silver. Out through the Casio triangle to the line, Leroy Donald wins in silver for Porsche and will now seal the lid on that championship. The first of our 4 divisions sees its champion today. Leroy Donald is your Silver Division Drivers' Champion. A tremendous performance, and I cannot stress that word enough. The number 14, that has been really quite something for him. Kieran Rodd makes 5th. John O'Driscoll looks at 6th. Making his way to the line then, Jaden Johnson-Ward also looking at a special night here in Suzuka. As we saw the first win of the season for Evans, Lamborghini will take home 2 division wins here, as across the line, Jaden Johnson-Ward takes his first Gold Division win. Behind him will be Ian Oates, who will step 1 foot closer to the chances of a Gold Division champion, but because of that technicality as discussed before on the stream, he'll have to fight this one out in Misano, rather reluctantly so. On paper, he should have been champion today. Great stuff from though. P2 in the Gold Division there. Behind him, Julian Aquati, P2 in silver. Milan Picorni down to the line then. We'll see the last of the podium positions in the number 29 car. We see McNally, P2 in the championship, P4 in today's race. That could be P5, because you can see behind him there, that's Robert Hogan. Coming to the line, it's going to be close, but it's no cigar. 4th and 5th there in the silvers, McNally and Hogan. The last of our division winners then coming down towards the line, and it will see a change of the lead here, albeit not a championship wrapped up just yet, but Callum Turner comes down to the line to make our 4th and last winner of today. The bronze division 111 McLaren wins in Suzuka. Brilliant stuff there from Callum Turner. He'll overtake Ryan Castle in the Drivers' Championship on the run-up towards Misano at the season finale. So your 4 division winners today, Evans. Looking here, Evans, Donald, Johnson-Ward and Turner. And one of those 4 has now sealed the lid on their championship prospects. Leroy Donald is our first of 4 Drivers' Champions in this series. Silver now closed out. Only platinum, bronze and gold remain. Lee Evans takes home his first division win of the season in brilliant fashion there. That was quite something indeed from the 44. That was not a foot wrong. The whole race was a flawless endeavor from the 44. The 54 was like a bat out of hell. I'd never seen anything quite like that there from Carlos Dish. Carved through the field like a hot knife through butter. Alan Alexander was a tremendous drive as well. Fastest lap at the end of this race as well for the Bentley. While it may not have been last week's race win and a double Bentley win, it'll be a double Lamborghini win this time around in Suzuka from Evans and from Johnson-Ward. Well, that concludes things here on the penultimate round of the season. Already 1 championship crowned. Leroy Donald, your Silver Division Drivers' Champion, but there's still 3 more championships to crown, and we'll be finding all 3 of them come down to a single point on August 12th. Sorry, I believe I said August 15th earlier this broadcast. No, August 12th. At the Misano World Circuit in Misano Adriatico, Italy. Round 8 of the OLR x VSR GT3 Midweek Championship. What a round it's been today then. You'll catch us next at 5 AM this Saturday coming as we go live from the VPR 2 hours of Watkins Glen from Watkins Glen International in Schuyler County, New York State, in the United States of America. Join us also on Sunday at 2 PM for coverage from Silverstone via HCCL's Silverstone Bring 'em All, hosted by FAFC. That's all from us here today on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.